Hello, crafty friends. My name is Jessica, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we have a card for you using some Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink, a layered stencil with a die, and we're going to go ahead and do some ink blending on colored cardstock. Now, this is a colored cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. I'm not sure what the color is currently while I'm filming, but I'll be sure to link it below. And we're going to go ahead and use this layered stencil. This is called the Layered Pixie Flower Stencil, and it does come with a die. Now we're going to be blending on this cardstock, and there's a reason for that, but what we're going to be doing later on in the video after we've blended onto it is we're going to be cutting these flowers out and building these flowers up as a background, kind of creating our own patterned paper, but we're going to add a little bit of twist and pop those die cuts up. So we're going to go ahead and put this on a Simon Says Stamp sticky mat, and then I'm using some tape that I picked up at Walmart. I'm not really exactly sure. I've had it for a couple of years now, but it reminds me of painter's tape. Maybe it's just solid colored washi, but it works really well for these stencils that don't quite fit and there's not enough room around the edges. I just want to make sure that I add a little bit of tape and this tape works good. So we're going to go ahead and get started using the Cabbage ink. I am head over heels for this color. I've used it a lot recently, but I really love the way that the green is showing up here on this yellow. Now I chose yellow cardstock because I thought it would really pair well with the greenery that I'm using, the two green colors, and kind of give the leaves a little bit more dimension by having that color underneath. So as I'm ink blending this, I'm really focusing on the greenery and the stems of the florals that I'm going to be able to use a die cut on and cut them out completely. I'm ignoring the ones on the side, not really paying attention to those because those ones are going to give me an incomplete die cut out. And I want to just do the ones here in the middle. It's going to give me about, let's do a quick math, 13 of them by focusing on just the inner florals here that are going to give me a full die cut with the end. So I did go ahead and decide to bring in Mocha just to go ahead and darken up the centers of the florals. This brought a more realistic feel to the way that this image laid out, especially when I go and add the floral petals on top. But I'm trying to be careful not to go back over the leaves or go into the leaves on top of where I'm blending. There are one or two of them that got a little bit of brown on them, but I did forget that I'm going to go ahead and layer these with a darker green on top, so it ends up covering it up. So I'm trying to be careful, but knowing now that I don't need to because I'm going to end up covering up any of those little flaws that showed up on the leaf, at least the lower portion of the leaves. So we're going to do a quick clean. I like to use the Squeaky Clean from Brutus Monroe on my stencils as well. If I'm using something that's more goopy, like a medium or a paste, I go ahead and wash those right away because some of those pastes dry really quickly and you don't want to ruin your stencils by letting those sit on there. If I'm knowing that I'm going to do that beforehand, I will bring a little tub of soapy dishwater down and put them right in there as soon as I'm done, since my craft room is in the basement and I'm not close to a water source. So now we're adding kale on top. Now cabbage and kale are in a trio together, so that's why I did choose them to layer on top of each other. Kale is the darkest and cabbage is the lightest, and then I believe artichoke is the one in between. But kale is also a really beautiful evergreen foresty color that just pairs incredibly well with this yellow background and that mocha brown. I'm really loving the way these are looking right now, but oh, let's add terracotta and just definitely step these up 100%. I am obsessed. I know I'm obsessed with cabbage, but terracotta, I had been dreaming about this color when I was trying to decide what sort of video I was going to do today, and I knew I needed to use it. And so this is where we landed, and I'm so excited on how this turned out. So I went ahead and added clay just to the tops of the petals, just to add a little bit more of a lighter blend. I was hoping to kind of do dark at the base and then move it up to the lighter color, but terracotta just definitely ended up taking over. There's not a lot of space here to play with the colors, and so I ended up just going full in with terracotta for these last ones with adding a little bit of clay, but honestly, I don't think it did anything. And look at how beautiful this panel is with that terracotta on that yellow. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick little clean, and then I'm going to go ahead and take this off the sticky mat. This is a newer sticky mat, so it's pretty sticky. And then I'm going to go ahead and die cut all of the images out. I went ahead and cut out the Sending Smiles die 4 times out of the Neenah 100-pound classic crest, and then once out of the glossy black from Simon Says Stamp, and once out of gold. I wasn't sure where I was going to be heading, and then it's not showing, but I also did a shadow layer out of vellum. Now, this is me just determining how these are going to look. Am I enjoying it? And if I'm going to be cutting down that yellow panel to create a border. I did decide to go ahead and trim it down. So I trimmed this panel down to 4 by 5 1/4. Now, here's the reason why I did ink blending on the color cardstock. I knew I was going to pop these up, and I just love the look that it gives. It almost looks like these florals are a part of the background, but then the dimension makes a very playful feel to it. And another thing is, if we had done this ink blending on white paper, it would have that white halo around the edges and around the inner portion of the florals. And I did not want that. I really wanted these florals to feel a part of the background. And so that's why I did ink blending on colored cardstock, is because I knew I was going to pop it up on cardstock and I wanted it to be cohesive. Now, I'm the self-proclaimed fiddling queen. So this is me. I'm taking my time and making sure that I've got these florals going different directions, that we're not repeating things that make it look a little bit off. And I'm just fiddling to ensure that they're exactly where I want them to be. Now, in art school, we did learn that you want to take your images off of your panel. So I'm trying to be mindful of that. And I'm also creating gaps around the edges where, after I trim some of these off that are hanging, I'm going to be including those into the gaps. You can see them there on the right hand side, and making sure that I use as much of these little florals as possible. The nice thing about having things off the edges, it continues your eye away from the center portion of focus. And so that's why it's good to do that. Now, I did have 3 of these little florals that had the tops of them cut off just because of how I lined them up on the paper. And I'm making sure that I'm using those ones, like this one right here, on a part where I'm going to end up cutting them off because, one, they were a little brown from one of the ink blendings, and then they also had the top part cut off. These are the new Tim Holtz scissors. This is the first time I'm using them, and I am in love. These are great. I just kept the normal spring that is included in the original packaging, and then I cut out the one that comes with it. It does have an additional spring that I think will create more tension. This one felt really great. I didn't feel like I had to put a lot of pressure to clamp it down or cut it, I guess. And I'm wondering if the other spring is a little tighter, that gives just a little bit more tension for anybody who wants a little bit more of that. So because we did a lot of popping up, I'm going to go ahead and use some tape runner to adhere this panel. I am not a fan of using liquid glue. I've not had good success with it not wrinkling my paper to make it look weird. So whenever I can, I do use tape runner, even though it feels a little bit weird with all of those popped up florals. Now, we did just go ahead and determine that I'm going to do the gold Sending Smiles. The black made a great statement, but I thought the gold just really blended in and became a part of this panel, which is what I was wanting. It felt more like it belonged on this panel, where the black was making more of a statement. Sometimes I like to be a little more subtle on my sentiments, and this gold is definitely doing that. It's still creating a nice focal point, but it's not wham bam in your face like the black was. So because I had cut it out 4 times, I went ahead and we're gluing them all together using my stamping blocks to create some pressure to ensure that they adhere completely. Now here you go. I'm second guessing. Just want to make sure before I commit that I didn't want to do the black. And yes, I did not. So I'm going to go ahead and save that sentiment for a future card. I'll just go ahead and include it in my little sleeves that I keep the die cut in. As I was saying, I cut the sending smiles sentiment out of white cardstock 4 times. Typically, I only do 3, but I lost track somewhere when I was making sure that I was cutting everything out, and I cut it out 4 times. And then we're going to adhere it with some of Simon Says Stamp's gold metallic cardstock on top. Now, I'm just making sure that we've got good adherence. I did get some liquid glue over the top of the sentiment. I have misplaced my rubber eraser, but rubber erasers work really well on getting any extra glue off of your metallic cardstock. I'm going to be sure to order one in my next order because it works so incredibly well. As long as you're delicate, you don't go in too hard, you can pull up a lot of the over liquid glue that dries on your colored cardstock. Here I'm trying to use this little white eraser and it didn't work good, so I'm just moved on. It is what it is. I'll get a rubber eraser to fix that in the future. I'm really loving how that looks. Absolutely gorgeous. I'm happy with that. The black would have been good, but like I said, I didn't want to make a huge statement with that sentiment. I wanted the background to really speak and be the focal point. So in the sending smiles sentiment, there within the G, there's a little heart. And so I went ahead and used what was left on my brush of the terracotta ink and inked it up. And we're going to go ahead and place our sentiment here towards the top of the card and then put that beautiful little heart inside the G. Now, you could definitely stop here by just adding the sentiment on this panel. There's a lot going on with the dimension, with the background, creating that pattern paper. But I felt like we needed a little bit of sparkle. So I grabbed some of these gold coined metallic confettis from Simon Says Stamp and I started putting them on and realized I didn't like just having them hover around the sentiment. I wanted them to be in the whole panel. So I went a little crazy and added a bunch of these to the background, kind of tucking them underneath the greenery and the florals so that some of them are out in full force and some of them are more hidden, just to add that extra layer of dimension. And this is just me doing a lot of gluing to try to get these all adhered appropriately. But I absolutely love the way this looks. You'll see at the very end when I pick the card up towards the camera, this added a really great extra little dimension and a little pop of fun to this card. And I'm just using my Simon Says Stamp placement tool and some Barely art glue. And that's going to be the card for today. Be sure to check out the description box where I have all of the links to the products used to create this card. Note that they are affiliate links, and what that means is if you shop with me, I do receive a small commission at no cost to you. And I just want to let you know, thanks for being here. Take care.